Join us now, the longest running CEO of the major American. I guess that's good, but it also sounds, let's say, wise, I think. And you've been through a lot. Jamie Dimon, head of JPMorgan Chase, made some news last week, didn't you, my friend? That was interesting. Could you expound on that? What, if the government shutdown continues, we actually could bring on more than just a slowdown. We could bring on zero, perhaps?
So first of all, welcome. Happy to be here. I was actually repeating somebody else.
I know.
As you mentioned.
Ian Shepard
said that if it lasted the whole quarter, it could make growth zero. Now, I don't actually know. We all think it's kind of a hockey stick that actually exponentially gets worse as people stop spending money and restaurants don't get money and they don't spend and vendors. And we just don't know. We've tried to figure it out, but it's not a plus. It's just not a plus out there.
The recent developments, and I don't know, nobody knows, but we're right in the middle of it now. I just wonder if you think that the more we hear about Coast Guard, people not putting food on the table, I mean, it's incumbent upon someone to move off the dime or the snide or whatever.
Well, I heard David Rubenstein on your show saying that, and he probably spoke to someone who may know.
And McConnell has two competing plans.
The Democrats and Republicans should sit down and finish this issue immediately and compromise to do it. That's what they should do.
All right.
Jamie, you talk about leadership styles all the time. What's it going to take? I mean, these are our supposed leaders in Washington, both sides of the aisle. The idea that they've let this go on for 33 days?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I thought the president actually moved a little bit. Well, he spoke about $5.7 billion. Part of that was, I think, like $1.5 billion was things that Democrats wanted. Everyone wants the DACA to stay. You know, you can argue 3 years permanently, but, you know, to me, there's the makings of a deal, and they should make a deal because it's going to get worse for the American public. And they shouldn't allow it. And it could damage, you know, it's damaging comps a little bit. You see consumer business comps are skyrocketing. Now it's coming down a little bit because of that, because of trade, all the noise around the world about populism. And so, you know, if policymakers want the economy to grow, they better keep the eye on the ball.
Is it having on the bank? And the reason I ask is we've had a lot of conversations, including with Adita Freeman and other. We're going to see Derek Khosrowshahi, who's supposed to maybe pursue an IPO in 2019. Right. Everybody's pens, as far as I understand, are down right now, which means that bankers, lawyers, accountants, anybody who would be doing that kind of business is at least temporarily not doing it.
Yeah. So another example. So IPOs can't get done. Anything that's got to get signed off by the SEC basically can't get done. So the backlog will continue to grow. People waiting. People not getting comments on their 10K. All these things, but they're just not good. This is not the way to run around. And, you know, somehow our government should figure out a way simply never to do it again.
Are we at neutral? Fed funds? Are we at neutral?
I don't know. Can I just give you a quick assessment? Because I think, you know, he's all the noise out there. The U.S. economy is kind of like a ship that's going. It's growing ex the shutdown 2 to 2.5%, and that's going to keep on going for a while. Then you have all this other noise. Okay, geopolitical noise, Brexit noise, what's the Fed going to do? I'll talk about that in a second. Shutdown, trade, and they're kind of like boiling the waters in front of that ship. So eventually that may very well cause a slowdown or a recession. And I don't know if it's 2020 or 2021, but the range of possibilities is broader and the range of bad outcomes is increasing.
Yeah, but if something really good happens, you get a tailwind? If we did something...
Yes.
So then it's not 2 to 2.5. Then we're back to maybe 3.
It's possible. And I think the Fed will look at what's going on. I mean, my guess is they'll probably pause now. But if they raise rates again in 6 months or so because we're growing at 2.5%, that's still a good thing.
Let me ask you.
I always tell the what is much more important. The why is much more important than the why.
But that's if the Fed reads the economy right. That's the big question. That's where people.
My guess is with all of the stuff that's going on today, they're going to wait a little bit.
But Jamie,
if you have growth of 2% in the first quarter, you know, adjusted for the shutdown, then maybe 2.5% in the second quarter, that is a good thing. You know, and even the IMF report, it was reported very negative. They reduced their global growth forecast from 3.7 to 3.5. Most of the negative coming out of Europe.
But Jamie, in terms of GDP U.S., you're one of the few CEOs who actually was with the President Trump, that is, on the idea that we could get to 3% or 4%, and that you could unleash...
I don't necessarily... one of the few CEOs that...
There were, I would say, most economists and many CEOs would have told you...
Whatever.
Okay, we can debate where you think everybody was
that's a false
at that time, but the question is...
A lot of people like the tax reform and the deregulation.
Yeah.
I'm not dissuading you of that view.
Yeah, maybe economists, but CEO. Anyway.
But the question is, now that we're back to 2.5%, how do you think about that view a year ago?
If you make a list, I mean, sometimes if you look at ourselves, like what can we do better as a nation? not just yelling and screaming about other people and not being afraid about geopolitics or that. But what could we do? We don't get infrastructure done right. The tax reform is critical to have a cumulative buildup of capital in the United States and reinvest it here. We don't get our kids apprenticeships to get them jobs. Our healthcare system costs too much. It's a great healthcare system, best in the world, 18.5% of GDP. Okay, we don't give our felons jobs. If we looked at our own issues and fixed them, we'd be growing at 3%. And, to me, and reform was part of that. Regulatory reform, tax reform, small business formation was lower than it's ever been in a major American recovery, mostly because of regulations and lack of access to capital. And so to me, I always look at something, what can you do better yourself? Like analyze it. But the thing that we have to do is facts, analysis, detail, not just slogans. And then policy that's well done and explained to the American public as opposed to slogans and policy that's implemented that doesn't work. I mean, you made a list of the policies that we've done in America for the last 50 years that were complete and utter failures, and they're still there. I mean, we should acknowledge it and fix it. And, you have a...
What's at the top of the list?
Well, I would put on the next round is immigration reform is hurting this country dramatically, including merit-based, more merit-based, infrastructure. I've mentioned you guys before, 8 years to put a man on the moon, 12 years to get the permits to build a bridge. Education, and think of education where kids graduate high school, vocational school, with apprenticeships and training that gets them a very good job. Okay, and healthcare, I think, is a little more complicated, but we need to work on that. Regulatory reform still needs to be done. We put in place, we have in place regulations that are being followed. Basically they're bureaucracy. The American public really it's bureaucracy. It's not, and it's some form of sinecure. And sometimes they're regulations are state and local. They're not federal. So if you travel with me one day and visit a bunch of small businesses and ask them what they have to go through to open a small business, how many licenses they have to get, how many times they get audited by the city, the state, or the federal government, for a store with 10 people working in it. So it's us. We did this to ourselves.